right, guys. Scott Morse leads the Deals podcast. As you know, sales is the greatest sport in the world, and my goal today is to bring you one of those elite, world-class athletes of the game. It's the hungriest of entrepreneurs like today's guest who can show you how to create millions from mere pennies. I know that you have the same burning appetite and desire to consume all the tips and tricks that we're about to share with you today that one day we learned from our mentors and the people that we followed. So here we are, another episode of the Leads to Deals podcast, where we're going to talk about everything from leads to deals and everything we talk about leads to deals. So if you're able to get any value from today's podcast, from today's YouTube, I want you to do me a favor, subscribe to the show. I always appreciate you guys liking and commenting as well. So with that being said, let me introduce one of my dear friends from this industry, some of that I've got to know over the years, some that I have tremendous respect for in the game, and today's guest, Samuel Abundes, CEO of Property Pals USA. How's it going, brother?
Good, Scott. Thanks for asking. Yourself?
I'm doing fantastic and amazing. I know where I'm at, it's a little bit warmer than where you're at. So for everybody out there, tell them where you're located right now.
We're out in Chicago, Illinois. We do deals throughout the surrounding Chicagoland area. We know it's big out here, but yeah, Chicago, Illinois is where I'm at.
And so for people who don't know, the Leads to Deals podcast, I'm sitting in a big monster call center that works in the REI space. That's how I first met Samuel and his team, is because we have some business dealings there in the REI world. We'll circle to that here in a little bit. But for the guys and gals that are out there right now that are listening, they're just getting to know you at this stage. Let's go a little bit into your background on the sales side, because as we were saying off camera, it's like, dude, we got a lot of similarities. Like, you're the type of guy I could sit and smoke a cigar with and just shoot the shit for forever. So like, what's your kind of sales like journey story? How'd you get into sales?
I mean, literally, the way I got into sales was picking up a headset and calling. I mean, I had no sales experience. I come from a construction background. Never cold called, never read a script, never closed a deal. I mean, I used to sit in my apartment in Elmwood and bang calls out for 10, 12 hours a day while I was unemployed, laid off on construction, right? Because we do cycles out here because it's cold. And I mean, I would be afraid for people to answer the phones. I'd say, man, go to a voicemail so I could drop a voicemail. I mean, I literally started from scratch, Scott, when I say in the sales cycle here.
What type of construction were you doing?
Shit. Funny story. So I was cutting yards for $10 an hour, seal coating and doing asphalt for 12. Got into the union, started making better money. I just knew I was capped there. So the next best thing was wholesaling, and I found wholesaling out through. It's a longer story, but the short and long of it was through a Tony Robbins event. I signed up for a $1,000 course. They closed me. I'm an easy closer at $35K to figure out the word wholesale. Yeah. And then I went into YouTube, and the rest is history.
I always say this is like, I'm easy victim in the sales process. And I think some of the best sales guys are, A, because we appreciate the hustle, but B, also because it's like, we know what we want. We enjoy the process. And when we're on this side, we kind of release our guard a little bit. But I want to go back to this construction thing for just quite a second, man. Talking about similar backgrounds, my father was a roofer, my grandfather was a roofer. I was destined to do those types of things. And I kind of always had this like weird association with sales. You kind of has a bad stereotype. So what type of construction specifically were you doing though?
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, my evolution through construction, again, I started cutting yards for $10 an hour. And I got a backstory to that. I mean, I don't want to get into that just now, but there was a backstory to that. Doing seal coating for a relative of mine that had a pretty big asphalt company. I was working 14, 16 hours a day from de sol a sol, like from sun to sun, right? And then I went into concrete construction. But before that, I was actually doing rehabs for my family members that owned the construction company over the winter, right? Laboring in the middle of the winter doing construction. So I understood the concept of what construction was for homes. And I always wanted to get into some type of real estate, right? Yeah. It never happened for whatever reason till, I closed
later. But what's really important too, though, man, I lived in Illinois for a while. I launched a company out of there, but you talked about joining the union and you said like there was a cap. And I always looked at union as the trap. And I know that there's a lot of people listening that'll hear your story that are in some type of union job. And what ends up happening is they learn how to game the system. They figure out how to be sick long enough. And so now how they're getting a raise is just gaming the system and taking more days off. But what ends up happening is that remorse sets in. Like, am I kind of going to my full potential? Am I really going to be my own man? And so you must have struggled with those things to even think about going to a Tony Robbins event, or to even think about leaving the trap of the union, the golden handcuffs that come with that.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was a struggle, right? I mean, listen, Scott, I was still working union construction while I had a cold call, a VA from the Philippines, name them. And I was still working construction. Mind you, I was still working, 8-10 hours a day while I was still trying to do this whole wholesale thing. I mean, it took me 8 months to get my first deal.
Yeah, but how'd you hear about it? You literally was Tony Robbins?
Literally, Scott. It's funny how it works. I went to the Tony Robbins event, paid $1,000 for the next, real estate course, went to the course. I actually got closed on a 3-day event for $35,000. They swiped all my credit cards and gave me a CRM system and bullshit approach where you go through agents and agents will send you leads and you got to run your numbers, drop number. Yeah, like
Tony Robbins pitching wholesale.
They closed me.
Yo, I can't believe it. I can't believe Tony Robbins pitching wholesale. Holy shit. That's crazy. Wow, I didn't know that.
But you want to hear something funny? There was a class action lawsuit and I got a refund about $300 from the whole ordeal with the whole thing. Which again, I'm grateful, honestly.
Yeah, of course. Dude, I tell you a very similar story, man. Tony Robbins changed my life. I grew up in the 80s, and so my parents had these books around the house, and I was really cognizant of the difference between talking about it and executing on it. So I would always see all these self-help books, and I would see my parents get into some multi-level marketing thing, and they executed good enough that it brought in extra capital, but it was never going to take us out of our financial strata, right? But I always had an affinity for Tony Robbins. So my boy, who had been in jail for like drug dealing, and he had been through some really bad stuff. He ended up moving out to California, was cutting somebody's rich hair. They gave him free tickets to Tony Robbins. He called me up, and it's like this spiral craze. But dude, I did the fire walk. Did you do the fire walk at all?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't do it. No.
So, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, is everybody screaming and yelling? It's good.
And again, I think it changed my perspective and mindset to approach life different. And again, Scott, I come from, listen, bro, when people talk, when they're coming from a rough background, like that was me, you know what I mean? When you made a reel about individuals not knowing how to get out of that rat race, out of the hood or out of certain areas impoverished in the community. And again, I come from a background like that, Scott. I come from a rougher, area where I'm at. I had my ventures with the law, right? Yep. I mean, so man, listen, this is something that I'll be forever grateful for, this trajectory that I'm on now, just because I know what it is to come from a statistically prone to lose background. Amen. Put it to you like that, bro.
And it takes that self-belief too, man, because there's a lot of people in even better situations where you came from that don't have that self-belief, that won't put that gamble into themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes it's all just that one light bulb that clicks for you. And so I love the fact that Tony Robbins did it for you on the wholesaling side. What I was going to share is that my Tony Robbins, I bought a DVD. I bought it box of DVDs. And then in that DVD, there was one DVD by a guy named Frank Kern, who I had never heard of before. And he's like this marketing guru. And then I'm watching this DVD. And so it was like 8 DVDs synthesized down to the one that worked, synthesized down to one sentence where he talked about how he goes to a website called Elance at the time, which is now Upwork, and how he can hire capital on the other side of the world for pennies on the dollar. And this is how he does it. And literally the light bulbs went off. And that one Tony Robbins event, to that DVD set, to that one DVD, to that one sentence, set off a chain reaction that literally allowed us to meet, and 200 plus employees here, and years of being an entrepreneur. And so, but if my brain wasn't right and your brain wasn't right, we would have just missed those signals that the universe was blessing us with.
Missed it. Yeah, it's a mindset thing, man. I mean, I think it comes down to that mindset, Scott. Honestly, man. I mean, if you're willing to change your mindset and believe in yourself and bet on yourself, like I've always been a betting man, especially on myself. But my mindset wasn't in the right, in the right field, I guess you would say. And yeah, I mean, if your mindset is there, man, you can conquer anything and do anything, man.
So Kent Clothier is somebody I consider a friend, but he's a mentor in the REI space. And he always talks about how you got to go from hustler to CEO. And I think right now people need to go, there's a lot of people out there that just need to get the hustler part down right. They don't know that this mousetrap exists. And so I know that there's gray areas to your story. There's gray areas to my story, but that same hustler mindset that allowed you to progress at whatever level in a place like Chicago, which is like a tough, street, smart, savvy place. And then obviously I was Richmond, Virginia, which isn't in comparison, but there's every city's got its own little place. But what doesn't exist today, or what is surprising, is how many kids went to jail? I saw just a stat the other day in Chicago. It said for the 7th time in 5 years, there wasn't a murder in the city. Something like really atrocious. Like, it's crazy. And you know how many kids are doing so many drugs, so many everything? Like, it's really bad. Drug-related felonies, et cetera, because they don't know this exists. The same neighborhoods that you're in, the same neighborhoods that you're bringing life to, that you're making tens of thousands of dollars, they're storing $400 worth of crack or whatever it is and facing felony time. So tell people what it is that you guys do. What does truly wholesaling mean to you for the people who are in Chicago that are going to be listening to this?
I mean, honestly, what wholesaling means to me is providing a solution to somebody that's in either a tough situation or in a situation they don't want to be in with a home, right? Because it's not all Southside properties that we deal with now. Thank God we were able to evolve and
Sure.
spread out through the suburbs where we're not dealing with hard properties. But again, we started with all Southside properties, vacant demo list, man. I was literally cold calling off my phone, Scott, $1 at a time in the office for 12 hours a day, calling these rougher area neighborhoods. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough. Our average spread was like $7,000. We were closing deals within a 75-day period. Like, I mean, literally we were on, the worst of the worst quality leads, right?
Yeah.
And somehow, one way or another, we rung the lemon and something came out of it.
So did you partner with somebody towards the beginning, or walk me through your guys' partnership so people can understand, like, hey, listen, this is how somebody did it on his own, or actually, no, this is how you leverage your buddy, and what's your guys' relationship to each other?
Sure. So it was 3 of us that started. Dan Saavedra, when we first initially started, he started initially with me. Then we met Dane Laverty, which is a co-founder of Property Pals USA as well. And yeah, essentially we leveraged all our skills because he comes from a tech background, right? He worked for Uber Eats at one point or another and was setting up offices throughout the states. So I cold called him on some properties that I had. I mean, literally the spark went off. I'm like, man, this dude's got it, right? You can hear when somebody has the it factor, Scott. When I heard you, I was like, this dude's a closer, bro. Like, this guy has the it factor.
Come on, thank you, bro.
So that's how I ended up meeting Dane Laverty, Daniel Saavedra. Obviously, a year and some change went by. We obviously ended amicably with Daniel Saavedra. you know, everything, he got paid out, everything, you know, we went and did our own thing, Dane and myself, and then, you know, it's to the moon from there, right? I mean, so yeah, you can partner up with individuals, but it's got to be individuals that have that it factor. And I can't, man, I cannot tell you how somebody gets the it factor. I just know it when I hear it, and you can just see it when you see it.
Yeah, and listen, I think what a lot of people who are out there don't realize is sales is everything, obviously, right? Like, you got to have sales skills. But if you in high school or college or whatever it is, you was always joking around, wisecracking with your boys, your mama jokes. I mean, everything it is that you were just quick on your toes, you are an ace when it comes to sales. Like, you don't even know it, but you're one of those people that you can just dominate in this type of space because you can grab a list like you did. You can grab one of the crappy lists that are out there. You can use your cell phone and dial 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. And so you did it. But I know something about guys that do it is like, hey, you're persistent. You said it took how many months for your first deal?
So this was I did 2 deals prior to creating Property Pals. Okay. It took me 8 months the first one, and then it took me another like 7 months afterwards. Then Property Pals was created. But even then, it took us 6 months to get our first deal, and it was one-off cold calling.
So you're talking 3 deals in like 2 years.
And yeah, 2 years plus running. Like, and there was nothing marvelous about these deals, guy. I made $7,500 the first time. I made $5,000 on the second time, and I invested that $5,000 into Carlos's Reyes all-in event. He actually picked me out of an IG live while I was living in the basement for 2 VIP tickets that I went out to his event. And man, me and Carlos still chop it up, bro. Like, believe it or not.
That's beautiful, bro.
Yeah, and me and Carlos have a very identical background because he's obviously, you know, he came here illegally from Mexico. I was raised in Mexico, came back to the States. My first language was Spanish. Like, you know, English. I mean, you know, he has a mom that came here illegally as well. Like, dude, it's just, you know, it's crazy how I have a lot of similarities with a lot of these people that are in the industry that, I don't know. It's crazy how it falls in place.
But you know what, man? That's also the trait of a really good communicator and also a good salesperson too. It's because you can empathize with somebody right out of the gates. Like, you can find those common traits to like somebody, to have that ability to vibe with them so well. And that's what it takes a lot on the phones as well too. It's just like, how are you going to take this random stranger and make them a friend? Well, it's because you want to be like them, or they're like you, or you guys share some type of bond. So I can see that for sure. And you do. I've watched you now. The reason why I wanted to have you on is you always have such a great personality. You're always hardworking. You're always just lighthearted in everything that you're doing. But you guys are really busting your ass. And so I see a lot of guys out there, particularly right now where the industry is a little wonky in the real estate side of things. Like, I see a lot of guys that it's like they're struggling, but they didn't. The thing that I find, and I'm just going to say it, I was going to sugarcoat it, is there's a lot of investors that try to cut out the wholesalers over the past year or so, and they were able to be successful being shitty at direct to seller because the market allowed them to be shitty. Now the market doesn't allow them to be shitty in their sales skills. Now they have to be dialed in. So you have all these investors who a year ago thought wholesalers were trash because they're making too much money, to now, oh my God, I'm going to have to do it on my own. So the foundation that you came from will always be there. You'll always have that back up against the wall, that raw dog mentality that took you from a cell phone to now the company with you and your boys.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is like I tell individuals, right? I mean, the hard part we've structured and we've built, right? Now you come in, you're literally getting you're getting, you know, cold call leads coming in, warm leads coming in from Lamasu leads. You're actually getting PPC leads. You're actually getting mailer leads. Like Scott, it's like, dude, you're served up. If you can't succeed getting these things served up on a hot plate, then sales isn't for you, man.
Hey, bro, tell me how often you don't want to take a newbie and be like, if I could just put you in a time machine to how it was a year ago and you saw what we had to do to be able to get you here, like, you would appreciate what you have in front of you so much more.
Scott, we ate peanut butters and crackers and McChickens, bro, for fucking like 8 months. Like, no bullshit. And it was rough and tumble, right? I mean, each deal, each time we're, scraping money along, buying here, putting money there. Like, I mean, and to me, you know, that's where the story is created, right? That's where the individual is cut. Because there's, you know, there's people that see a little bit of resistance and throw in the towel, turning around and go the opposite way. I'm like, fuck this, I'm gonna make it work.
So you're obviously a really good business operator, but also an exceptional salesperson. Where did you learn your sales skills from?
Here, you want to hear a funny story? YouTube. So John Martinez, this was before I even knew John Martinez, and we bought his program. It was John Martinez, Mike from Flip Nerd, Mike Hambright. We're Investor Fuel. We're members there. What else was I listening to? Max Maxwell. I mean, just reading and listening to podcasts. Honestly, Brent Daniels, TTP. I mean, I was working construction with headsets on, listening to podcast after podcast. Like the 8 hours I was working, the 8 hours I was listening to podcasts. Books, Never Split the Difference. That's like one of my favorite books. I probably listened to that thing 5-6 times, you know, from the times just traveling back and forth, and just reading, Scott, honestly, and just teaching myself and getting nuggets here, nuggets there, and just putting things together and trial and error.
Did you ever do you remember when you sat back and you were like, I don't have to worry about going back to construction again? Do you remember when you finally knew that like you wouldn't have to go back to being a manual labor?
Yeah. The day I walked into the office over at Logan Square with because I was supposed to go to work that Wednesday. I got operated that Friday from my eye because I had a detached retina. I went to get contacts so I can go back to the field, right? This is how the story works. I was getting operated to go back on the field. Detached retina. They didn't give me the contacts. I got operated. I walked in through the office and I told my business partner then, I said, hey, listen, we'll be $100K month wholesaling company. Mark my words. And shit, 3 years later, listen, we consistently hit 100K revenue last year for the last 6 months of the year, right? So like, yeah, that's when I said, hey, this is my hill and this is the one I'm dying on. I'm planting my flag here. So
where are you guys at now and kind of your sales journey? Are you going face to face? Are you over the phone? Are you still calling leads? Walk me through. Or do you still have the opportunity to do the sales?
So yeah, I mean, I'm still in the trenches, right? I mean, we've obviously, I mean, everything looks pretty while you're putting it out there, but I mean, I'm like, we let go of all our sales reps, right? Our closers. Just it wasn't they weren't closing deals, they weren't converting, and obviously, if you're not converting, we're not generating revenue as a company. So right now, I mean, I'm still in the trenches. You know, I'm still obviously with the hustler mentality and still trying to build. Because again, Scott, I don't come from I understand business and the whole thing. Like I'm building as I go and understanding as I go. So yeah, I'm still in the trenches closing deals. Last year, I think I did 750 in sales myself, just myself in the company. And we hit 1.4 last year as a company, right? I mean, bro, like, you know, but we're hiring, like we're putting out a lot of advertising, hiring individuals. We got a young kid in the disposition role. Obviously, we filled our transaction coordinator role because that's a lot of busy work. Obviously, we hired you guys. We've been with you guys, going on 8 months now? Yep. So like we're outsourcing this, right? I mean, we get some good data according to your guys' trackers. Like we have probably one of the best data from what RQ told me at one point from Audantic and IDI core skip tracing. Like, and you know, I think it was costing us like $68, I think, a lead from you guys or something like that, to that effect, that RQ gave me. I mean, it just
You have a good market, man. But so for everybody listening again, I also own another company. It's called Lamasu Leads. I'm blessed to have met him as being one of my clients. And so we serve him leads for his closer, his team himself up in Chicago. I've watched a lot of people go into the Chicago market virtually and get their teeth kicked in. the fact that you're there, I think really speaks to your expertise in that area. Also your commitment to buying good data, to buying good cold callers, to buying good platforms, et cetera, et cetera. But why do you think so many people struggle going into Chicago? Because your acquisition prices are low. It's not a high acquisition price. Your lead prices are low. Your cost per deals are barely higher than Gary, Indiana. And that's the worst market out there. So like, why do you think so many people fail trying to go into your market?
I'm gonna be honest with you. There's a lot of red tape to get through. So if you don't understand the market and you don't understand the properties that you're chasing down, then you're never going to get too far, right? Because typically in Chicago and in the Cook County area, it's either taxes, water, and violations that are killing these deals. And then I've had so many individuals from out of the state virtual wholesaling send me deals over. I said, hey, have you guys checked water, taxes, and violations? No. How do you do that? Here, Cook County recorders, look here, check for liens, judgments, and just the bureaucracy of Illinois is what makes the market tough.
Yeah. There's also a lot of no-fly zones. Different sides of the streets can be different, better or not. And so what I've seen when I've helped people is like, they'll be like, man, I locked up 4 deals today. Well, you also can't dispo 4 deals because they just don't know where they're actually targeting out there. And so for you, what would you say is like one of the most challenging deals that you guys have gotten across the finish line up there in your market, man? Is there anything that you're like, man, dude, this one kicked our ass, but boy, if this one wasn't worth it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a 3-unit over in what's the area? I can't even remember there. It's 4810 West Jackson. Nonetheless, this house, we had it under contract. It caught fire twice. According to the police report, it was crackheads fighting over you can't make this stuff up, but nonetheless, it took us probably a year and a half to close that deal. It started off as a short sale, turned it around from a short sale to a wholesale to an individual out in California that we actually netted $100K. But this was after insurance claims and short sale and payoffs and everything in between, right? The city judgments and you name it, right? We actually closed it out in 2022. The last days of 22, we closed out and we netted $100K on that deal.
Yeah, I love it. And so for those people listening that are hearing this, it's like, okay, you and your partner, and obviously you have capital costs and some expenses, but did you ever make $100K as a construction guy in a year?
About 85K as a construction guy, and that was working my hump off for it.
Yeah, that's for a whole year. And my man's talking about one deal. And so obviously they're not all like that are out there. But I think if somebody's listening and it's picking up, it's like, okay, well, you didn't have any sales experience per se, like, quote unquote official sales experience. Matter of fact, it's manual labor was the background. You saw real estate, but you probably saw it as a rich man's game like I saw it. I saw it as something like other people had and not myself. I was blessed enough that my parents owned a house, but we never moved in 18 years. We just couldn't afford to move. And it was like, that was their biggest asset. It was the biggest asset it would ever be for them for the most part. And so I always saw real estate was just something else. But once I fell in love with this game where I thought, okay, I can use the power of my conversation to move people in a direction that I want. Like, it's a big deal. So I fell in love with sales. Dude, I was 20 years old when I started my professional sales. It's been 23 years as high ticket sales.
Scott, I was 37, bro, 36. But I have some sales experience, bro. It just wasn't in it wasn't in real estate.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if I could just go snatch up so many of these kids and be like, cool, here's my man over here. Because all of them look up to all the bullshit rappers. All of them look up to the bullshit movies. Shit that's not really, really real. I can be like, yo, shake my man's hand. He made 100 racks in one deal. He ain't got to look over no shoulders. Ain't got to do nothing. He ain't pissing off people. He can go to his mama's house. He can do anything he wants. Life is okay if you go down this other path and then help clean up the community, help do those types of things. So, dude, I love it. I want to talk about leads real quick because everything we talk about, leads to deals, and we talk about everything from leads to deals. You're obviously doing cold calling as a marketing channel. You're doing that through us. What other marketing channels have you been doing over the past year or so as well too? And like, how are you seeing them today, et cetera, et cetera?
So what turned our business around, Scott, honestly, was 2 years ago, we dropped a hefty amount of mailers from this authentic data that we ended up picking up, right? Um, and from there, probably 40 days, 45 days after that, Scott, I mean, our business just zoop. Yeah, it was to the races. Like, didn't look back, you know, didn't think twice about it. And then it was just consistent revenue, consistent revenue. And people were like, man, mailers this. Like, no, like mailers are where it's at. Like, we actually do soft offers on checks when we send them out, right? And people call back either one or two things. Hey, what the fuck are you sending me this check for? Or, hey,
Yes.
When can you come out and look at my property? Or I need to sell, right? It's either or.
Do you mind sharing with people what your percentage of ARV is you're using in your offer letters? Are you guys putting a number on there?
We are actually. So we're putting 70% from ARV, and they're getting aggregated data from Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com to come up with these numbers. They're sending them out, obviously soft offers, and it takes us. We tried different percentages. We tried 75, we tried 65, I think it was, and we've gotten the best results off that 70, where we can still work a number where it makes sense to us to make a wholesale deal and or provide a service, because we got many ways to actually disposition these properties.
For those that are listening that are also doing mail, when you go back to give lead attribution, the people who call you up and tell you you're a POS and they would never sell to you for that price, do you end up counting that as a lead for your KPI purposes? Is it only the people who say, I'm kind of interested or whatever?
No, we do. I mean, we do. We probably should do a better job of actually weeding those out, but we do. We count all leads as one. I mean, my conversion rate ratio on that was 1 to 20. 1 to 20 calls that I'm taking in from Authentic, I was converting into an actual contract.
Yeah, opt-in mail is really good. And I also agree, because the way I look at it in our system, and we have closers, I have a closing office in Orlando as well too, and that's our market. But I count those, we do offer letters, very similar. But I count those as leads because to me, I'm still putting that person in my system. And even if they told me I would never, ever, you're a scumbag, how dare you? It's like, okay, well, now you're in my system and you're going to get my nurture campaigns and we're going to continue to market to you until that house is sold or you say DNC me. And so I know other people who don't, but they're like, hey, I only count it if I can have a healthy conversation. I'm like, well, to me, man, I want it because I believe in the long play. We'll constantly, once a month, get a deal that's 1,200 days old, 1,400 days old, whatever it may be. And so for those people that are listening, it truly is time and circumstance. Those are the two things that are going to change to be able to get you that lead into a deal. And so kudos to you for mail. Have you done any other? So you've done mail, you've done cold call. Have you guys flirted with any other channels, or are you currently doing any other marketing channels for your lead flow?
Yep. So we're actually doing PPC, and we're stepping into a nationwide wholesale. And I actually locked in. And again, this is from never doing a virtual. I mean, I've closed a couple deals from afar here in Illinois, but I actually locked in one over in Ohio and one in St. Louis, Missouri, virtually. And again, the concept is the same. It's just the approach is a little bit different. I've been reaching out. Shout out to my guy Alex the Shark. Kid's a closer over in Arizona. Funny thing, I listened to that kid when I was first starting off at Carlo Reyes's office, and I was just like, man, this kid's got the closing factor. Like this is the kid, and he's younger than me. And I don't listen. Yep. Don't matter. There's no shame in my game. I don't care who I'm learning from. I'm learning it, But yeah, that's where we're actually doing PPC leads as well on top of mailers and using your guys' company.
So I'll share with you. I did face-to-face sales for like 15 years. And so when I very first got into phone sales, it was, I don't know, 8 years ago or so. It was for a different industry. And what I realized is, the level of aggressiveness that I could be face to face, like really cutthroat Perfect, always with a smile on my face. Like you could just say anything you want in the world with a smile on your face. Period. End of story. That's a lesson. But then I realized, oh shit, people can hang up. Because it's different. You can't really just get kicked out of somebody's house very easily. And then I was doing face-to-face presentations where they came to our event and then we sat at a circular table and then we like held a gift for them. Like they had to sit with us for X amount of time before they got their gift anyways. So like I had just grown up in this like really super aggressive sales mindset mentality. And then I got over the phone and I did that for like the first 7 calls and I was getting clicked. Like, oh, never call. Phone number blocked, phone number blocked. So it took a little bit to get that smooth transition, but it's the same fundamentals. It's creating a friend, finding the pain, presenting value, isolating objections, making an offer and closing, give or take, right? So
yeah, between the pain point and the picture perfect solution, it's there.
Dude, I love it. I think that national is a great play for PPC. It has legs to it. Where I see a lot of people that do struggle, me personally, just because I'm exposed to so many people, is a lot on the disposition side and then a lot on the distraction side. So what ends up happening is this industry, what I've discovered, and you're an OG, so this doesn't apply, but this is a very shiny object. Like if you're any vendor, you could just sell anything. Like you'd be like, oh, I got this new CRM. And then the whole industry switches to this new CRM. Oh, there's this new data provider. This new data. And so you get a lot of people who just take their eye off the prize, which is, oh, the market that I built my company is here. I started chasing virtual PPC. I lost 20K, not a big deal. No, you lost 2 months. No, you lost 2 months of productivity. And that's where you get into it. So for you, like do you see yourself setting flags in different markets? Like where do you see your virtual campaign going?
So right now we're still fine tuning it. As far as where we're receiving these PPC leads from, I mean, they're coming in from everywhere. I mean, we got one from Stratton, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Florida, Texas, California. I mean, they're coming in from a wide variety of places, and we're trying to hone all that stuff in. My partner Dane is the one that's actually handling a lot of this PPC stuff. So we're honing that in now.
Do you guys novate at all?
We do. I actually have Eric Brewer's company. Funny thing, I gave Eric Brewer a ride from John Martinez and Jerry Green's event over in Ohio to the airport, and we bought his course. But yeah, I mean that course is a game changer, man.
It's an absolute game changer. I don't know if you've seen me, but I'm promoting it. He's coming to speak to all of my affiliates. He'll be speaking in like 2 weeks from now, 2 Wednesdays, Thursdays. You'll see me promoting it. But yeah, have a lot of respect for him. And for everybody listening again, Novation's just another exit strategy. It helps you kind of monetize the unmonetizable leads. And also it allows you to easily get into a new market where you may not have a lot of buyers because you're able to list your property on the MLS and leverage the buyer activity that exists there. Cool, man. Yeah. I saw in your notes, I was reading, it's like, dude, he never split the difference by Chris Voss. That is a monster book, bro.
Monster. Yeah. If you're new to sales, that's probably one of the books that I would recommend to read. And even as early as in a sales, experience that you have, that book essentially would change your mindset on how, like, tonality, just the approach on the sales side. Obviously using it with FBI negotiations, right? But again, the guy has a pretty good read in that book.
Yeah, I loved it. I enjoyed that book. I grew up on Zig Ziglar, and so like I got 200 kids here who were in a different country. Zig Ziglar's passed away a long time ago, but everybody here knows his name. And he's just really good. For me, he was so impactful on my career coming up learning sales, even though I came up, a generation or two before these kids. But he was the OG for me in my life. Were you familiar with him at all?
I know who Zig Ziglar is, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let me ask you just one kind of important one I always like to ask guys like you who are just really dialed in now. If you were to go back to that first deal where you were fighting for it, any advice you would give to yourself now after you've had a couple of 3-4 years in the industry, 300-400 deals?
Yeah. I mean, I would say delegate and build as early as possible and create SOPs and processes. That's like very important, because once you grow a little bit bigger or a lot bigger, it's harder to put SOPs and implement processes and I mean, it's not undoable, but it's just a little bit more difficult. So as small tasks that you do or small roles that you play, write them out, SOP them out, right? Put them on some type of spreadsheet or Google Drive sheet, and that's where the difference would be to run from where you're at then.
Yeah, that comes from I'm confident that comment comes from a position of pain, because I've been there as well too. And the most painful is when you lose somebody who's talented because they couldn't overcome my gap because I just set them to run. And it's like, no, bro, just sit in the seat and kind of like do what I'm doing and just roll, because you expect people to sometimes just pick it up just like you. But the reality is, as a young entrepreneur, I didn't have those SOPs. I didn't have those wireframes. And so I was setting people up, candidly, for failure, where they had to be a rock star to be able to survive in that environment, where they just needed some structure and nurturing. And that comes by having, your policies, your timelines, everything that comes with the SOP, standard operating procedures. So I can feel that.
Yeah, that's one thing I can't say, man.
Cool, man. All right. So listen, I want these guys that are in Illinois, primarily, listen, you're dialed into what markets in Illinois. Like, where, if somebody's like, hey man, I got buyers, I have a deal, I'm struggling to find a buyer, where are you most dialed in at, and then how do they reach you?
So we're dialed in Cook County, Lake County, DuPage County, and McHenry County. So we have all our data from Authentic from these four counties, right? And there again, this Chicago, Cook County, and then the surrounding ones, Lake, DuPage, and McHenry County.
Okay. And they can come to you if they have help on trying to run a comp. This is what you're telling me beforehand. Like, if they're just struggling to kind of get some assistance in getting these deals under contract, obviously you may be able to offer some assistance, but equally important, they can JV or dispo with you if they have a deal. And again, for everybody listening, these are legit operators. They're doing real volume, real deals. This is not newbies. This is not fly-by-night. They're supporting multiple marketing channels. They're spending healthily on their marketing channels. They're like real deal operators that you can sit back and watch every number of days. You'll just see a post from the titling office or the this, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have a deal, you need to reach out to them. What's your IG or what website? How do people get to you specifically, Samuel?
Yeah, so my IG handle is Samuel Abundes .rei. That's where you can reach me at, and direct message me. I'll reach back out. Facebook, Samuel Abundes. And just on the disposition side, we do have Investor Lift where we can actually put these properties out, and obviously we have a disposition rep that actually can bang out calls and find buyers and get things sorted out. So I mean, yeah, like Scott said, we're not a fly-by-night company. Like, this is my thing, right? Because I do have a lot of newbies call me and like, hey, I got a property that I have under contract. Okay, great. What do you have it under contract for? 48, but it's listed on Zillow for 43. I'm like, dude, like you got to stay away from them Zillow, leads. But if I'm in a newbie's shoes, Scott, this is what I would do, right? And I tell these kids when they call me, I'm like, listen, have your comps ready, have your property under contract directly from the seller, and also have access and what the true under contract price is.
Yep, I agree. My advice to a newbie, if they're in your market, is to reach out to you, form a relationship, and say, hey man, dude, I'd love to come work for you guys for free, commission only, for X amount of time. Everybody out there is trying to learn the ropes, and whether it's Property Pals or some other provider, there's a lot of offices out there that if you got the right attitude and the right work ethic and you're willing to put skin in the game, you're not coming in with your hand out. There's a lot of guys out there that have more leads than they have reps, and they have old leads that they're not calling all right now. And so every time I get a newbie who asks me, hey, listen, advice, what should I do? I'm struggling to get my first deal. I'm like, dude, just go get your first deal with somebody. Shadow, build those relationships, because you can shortcut that learning curve. And then you can also mitigate and decide if you really want to have the responsibilities of being a CEO. Because it ain't all easy. It's tough being on the phones already. Now worry about rent. Now worry about payroll. Now worry about this. So when you can do both of them, you're a true beast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Cool, man. Dude, I appreciate it. I wanted to hear more about your story. I know me and you, while we haven't had the opportunity to meet face to face, I've really enjoyed getting to know you as a client, as a friend, getting to know you online, hearing your guys' story. I'm dedicated for whatever I can do to help you guys. And then my big takeaways are, again, like it tends to be a lot in these podcasts, is there's a lot of guys out there who are busting their ass, doing a lot of manual labor, who may or may not even know that this industry exists. But if they do know, and they believe in themselves like you did, they put in the work ethic like you did, they go to YouTube University and drown and devour the information like Samuel Abundes did, then you'll have these monster 100K months at your fingertips if you just give it enough time. Sound right? Cool. Anything else, brother, before we sign off?
Nothing. I mean, just like I can say, a few things is just stay consistent, be persistent, and believe in yourself, man. Just that mindset, it's just that mindset. Believe in yourself.
It is, my man. All right, brother. It was a pleasure getting to speak with you. Catch you soon.